Today I'm going to talk, we're going just like way over the top for the first talk after the lunch. Now we're going back to more concrete and mundane things, like writing source code on a file-based system. Well, I'm going to talk about the work I've been doing to support the Tonel format in VA Smalltalk, that was sponsored by Instantiations, actually. Well, it has some few objectives to actually have Tonel in VA. One was that actually as Seth was talking yesterday, to the outreach, not only outside the Smalltalk community, but also to build bridges between the different dialects so we can share code and actually maintain some libraries and stuff like that. So actually it's not like tearing down the bridges, but actually to build new bridges. The other one was actually to provide VAST with a file-based format for VCS systems like Git in particular. That is the most used one, but it could work with any other one. And the other one was to have a source backup of the actual applications that are in an MV library. I don't know if you are familiar with MV. MV is like the best source management system for Smalltalk, but it's a binary format. It has some issues with, because it can be network based, but it's very chatty, so it has its latency issues. So it's good to have sometimes a backup of that. So for those that actually are not frequent, I mean, do not remind exactly what is Tonel. Tonel is a plain text-based source code persistent format. Basically, it's like Dolphin has its own, we had another ones, and Tonel is the format that was chosen by Pharo. It uses its own syntax and its own parser, so it's not JSON, it's not Stone, it's just kind of a mix of those. And it basically supports these kind of types. It supports a package, a class, a trait, and what's called an extension or a loose method or something like that. So this is the spec of Tonel, basically. This is like the basic format for each one of these types. And this is an example of a class that's stored in Tonel. So you can see that there is the class definition, and this is like a method or an accessor. I just kind of formatted to make it fit, but it's the same thing. But, and there's always a but, it was designed within Pharo, with Pharo needs in mind, and without considering other dialects, because it was a Pharo, basically designed for Pharo. So, we had to make it work in VA. So, but the issue is that we have some specific features in VAST that are not in other dialects. The simplest one is that we have multiple method categories. Dolphin has that too. We have public and private methods that are actually public or private at the method level. It's just not a convenient convention that's just stating that it's private on the beginning of the comment. We have applications that is like the most closest thing to a package, but the applications can have prerequisites, and they are specified in the application. And the applications can have sub-applications, and the sub-applications can have sub-applications, and on. So basically, you can have a tree of, let's say, packages, just mapping the Tonel concepts. And the sub-applications can have conditions to load. So basically you have a tree, and if some condition is met, when you load that sub-application, is going to be loaded, and if it's not, that's not going to be loaded. That's what we call the part that is not loaded, that's what we call the shadow, because it's specified, but it's not loaded. And that there's nothing like that actually in any other Smalltalk. And one of the main differences, that one of the things that I had more issues with, was actually that the shared pool management is different. I mean, the declaration is not a subclass of shared pool with class instance variables as it is in Pharo or in VisualWorks, but it's actually, you have a special declaration method with a pragma that creates a shared pool instance that actually is the shared pool. It's not like a global like in Pharo. But there are semantic equivalences. We have both sides. We have The application maps to a Pharo package. You have the sub-application that can be hierarchical, that maps to nothing. We have the conditions that map to nothing. And we have that extension that actually maps to what we have, that's also an extension. And Pharo has traits, and we don't have that, basically. By we, I speak by VA Smalltalk. And as I said before, shared pool are classes, and here are defined by pragmas. There are instances, it's a different thing. So how is the architecture of the Tonel Tools, as we call it in VA? There is a parser, there is a reader, and there is a loader. Now, it's not really an architecture, actually. It's just a diagram of how this works. It actually has like 3 main building components that actually help us to read code from Tonel. And we also have a writer that was written initially by Mercap, and we just kind of adapted to support the loading afterwards. But that actually can write Tonel code using the specification. But it's like 2 different parts actually that we put together, but actually the writer is independent of the loader, of the reader parts, etc. So how it works? There is a difference in how Tonel works compared to other tools in VA. For instance, when you import something into the library in VA, that thing goes straight, it's a binary copy of the package into the library. It's not that you actually compile it. And what we have here is like, when we are processing the thing, we create an object model of the whole thing. We have like the Tonel package, Tonel class, Tonel extension, etc., etc. And then we try to map that to actual applications, and we work on a per application basis. If there's app or sub-app, and this is something that is using Tonel but not coming from Pharo, but coming from actually from VA, because we support all the hierarchy using VA and Tonel, the loader will detect all the metadata that we store in the file that I will describe later, and we are going to build a tree and detect which one is the application that we can load. And this is a difference that I was mentioning before, is that all the source gets through the compiler. So basically, we cannot load code directly into the DM library. We have to compile it first. This imposes some limitations, in particular with the use of shadows. This is the thing. I mean, first we compile into the image, and then we version everything into the library. So there are gaps in this. I mean, if we want to work transparently within, in particular, we think about Pharo because it's like the canonical implementation of Tonel and what they use most. But actually, Tonel can be used maybe to exchange code with Gemstone or with any other dialect that uses it. So what we do, how we map this? Well, we write some extra metadata in the type info of the Tonel file. So basically, we have this VA prefix where we specify the parent application, we specify the sub-applications with the conditions, because the purpose is also to be able to store vast applications in Tonel and be able to read them back into VAS. So never going to Pharo, actually. It's just to have a file-based source version system. And also the prerequisites. And for the methods, it's the same thing. We write, if we have multiple categories, we're going to write them all, and we're going to preserve the category property for Pharo, for instance, and we're going to put only one, and also the visibility. But there is still a gap, so we have to be aware of it. And well, one of the first one is the pools, the shared ones. As I say, there are classes with class variables, and the initialization of the keys of these shared pools are done usually on a class-side initialize method. And in VAST, you can. They're actually, as I say, the instances of shared pool, and you have a declaration pragma, and actually you have a constant shared, a shared pool with constant values that are initialized at definition time. So we have to kind of make like this. This is like a declaration. I don't know if you can read it. If not, sorry. Where you actually define a constant, and you just specify the number, and well, it has a comment, and so we don't have that, so we have to make some decisions there on how to actually support that for both. I mean, both for Pharo and for Tonel, for VA. So the word of the day is compromise, always, because we couldn't match everything. So we have to actually, if you're using VAST and you want to use Tonel, there are going to be some changes you have to do in order to use the pool dictionaries. So you have to have, for instance, non-constant pool dictionaries, and then you have to initialize them afterwards so we can map that to what Pharo does. There are caveats, of course. This is something important. Maybe we can, we can work with the Pharo guys. I'm looking at Pablo here because this metadata that we write in the Tonel file. We have made some experiments. Actually, we just wrote some Tonel applications. Some applications in Tonel format, and then loaded them in Pharo, and it works. But the thing is that all this metadata that is in the file, once read by Pharo, and then if they write it again, it's going to be lost because they don't read this metadata, they don't store it anywhere. So basically, you don't have that. You want that too? I think that Gemstones need that too, yeah. Well, we do that, but
Anything that we don't understand, we just keep it right back out. That's what it's supposed to do.
yes, it was supposed. But the thing is that the Tonel in Pharo, as far as I could see, doesn't have like all the abstractions for Tonel. It's just a file format.
It's not there yet, I don't think.
Yeah. So, well, as I say, it will ignore the metadata, so when you write it back, you will lose it. So basically, if you have a hierarchy and you write it as Tonel format, you import it in Pharo, then you go back to VA, and you don't know, actually you have all applications because you lose all that metadata. All the methods become public, you lose everything, basically. And the shared pool is, of course, this is some of the things that, as I mentioned, we have to do because we have to make some conversions. This is very VA specific, but it's related. And of course, it is a work in progress. It's like we already have, we define a milestone. It's all the issues that we consider that should be in that milestone are already completed. But still, we have to test it with real case. For instance, yesterday, he was presenting the TensorFlow talk. I just decided to, not TensorFlow, the Polymath, I decided to load a package from the GitHub repo into VA, and the process worked, but the thing is that, well, you have this syntax thing with the curly braces, the dynamic arrays, and that didn't work. But for some part it works, so we have to test with some other real use applications. So, okay, this is what works now. I'm going to show you what works. Let me show you here, just a small example. Right here. Oh, this is the presentation. Hold on. Next steps? No, not next steps. Yeah. Let's make it simple. I'm going to show you here. This is basically how you load something now, because we have some things that are not yet in the current version that I'm going to talk in the next steps. This thing keeps bigger. No, but it's big. It's big in my screen.
Okay, don't worry.
That's what she said. Yes. Okay, now you read it now. This is basically because I cannot specify, because we don't have any analogous of the configuration map to manage the dependencies and the load order. We have to load all the packages manually. But what I'm going to do is basically to load the TensorFlow from source code and just run the test to prove that actually this works. And I hope this works, because I haven't tested it today. Oh, really? Oh, no, I didn't load Tonel, that's why. Load. Required maps, it's loaded in Tonel. now it will work. Do it, execute. Well, what it's going to do is basically it's going to ask a lot of things. This is reading the commit ID and the commit timestamp from the Git, because it's actually, this is a version in Git, so actually it reads that. It's going to ask me a few times. This is one of the things that we have to refactor. It's blocking because it's compiling a lot of things. So while it loads, I will do what Mariano does. That's actually to show you the next steps. So while it loads, come on. Okay, this is what's missing now. What's missing is actually to have an equivalent thing of the configuration maps. We are looking forward to talk with Dale because he has something going on with Rowan that actually handles that. So we have to kind of wait for that to make something that is already invented, basically. We need to refactor some parts of the application, of the loader, to actually not be, for instance, too interactive for if somebody wants to run it unattended, and just, let's say, I want to always load the latest version as the base. I always want to I don't know, do the same thing for the prerequisites, and of course, if you want it to be interactive or just headless. And we have to build a tool to actually migrate all the commits as they did for Monticello, that actually created all the Git commits for Tonel, so you can migrate a repository. Well, we want to do something like that just for library applications. And of course, as I said before, heavy use testing. So it's, if you're using VAST, I'm looking at the guys from Mercap, we would like to test with real cases. And this is the repository, and hopefully this finished loading. Now it's still asking me things. And I was just like, this is a proof that actually I could load the complex library like TensorFlow, and just like it works basically, because it was like, this has many of the things that actually are complex, like shared pools and stuff like that, and they actually work. So all test passing. So going back to the presentation, just to finish on time, because I liked that. Oh, nice. Just a quick recap for those that forgot. This is the Mind the Gap. Next steps, yeah. Questions? I saw it. I knew that was coming, but I just wanted to.
Hello.
He has.
Questions?
It's great that you're doing this. Thank you very much. It's really great to see this being used and getting more widely spread. Because the intent of Tonel was to be used in any Smalltalk dialect. And I have to apologize for not actually having written the spec yet, which has been on my to-do list for a while. But so if you have suggestions after having porting it for any changes that are needed, of course we would have to clear those with the Pharo community as well as Gemstone, because those are the people that are mostly involved with it so far. But you know, that's the intent is to make it available for everyone. So
yes, I have suggestions actually. Yes.
So good. Yeah, please talk to me.
Okay, I will.
Well, it's great that you are implementing it. It's true. I started working with Martin and Dale for solving a problem of basically this space, but this is great that you are using. I am very interested if you can say what are the missing extensions, the missing entities that could be nice to support also, and the problem of the missing metadata. Please, if you can open an issue in Tonel or in Pharo, we can check it because it should honor, the idea was to ignore all the non-handled metadata and then, but it has to keep it. It's a bug. It should keep it. So please do that. And maybe it's a good moment if we need to add new entities or optional entities in the files. Like, I don't know if you want to have an application like an element. Maybe we can even start thinking about having a version 2, so we can start versioning the files.
Yeah, it doesn't have. That's one of the things that I actually don't like. It doesn't have a version.
There is supposed to be a version header at the top of the files. It's just that Pharo doesn't actually do that yet. So.
Well, if it has no version, then it's version 1.
Well, yeah, exactly. It has to be that way. There was a, yeah, no, it was, there was a very pressing need on both the Gemstone side and on the Pharo side to actually get something working. So, not everything is complete, but yeah, there is in the spec that is not completely written. There is supposed to be a version header at the top of every file that says what Tonel version it is. As far as keeping the metadata and then putting it back out, that's one of the things that the Rowan package manager does. And that is currently in development within Gemstone. I did the initial design and the initial implementation and then partial implementation, and Dale's taken it from there. It is our intent, it is our hope that once we get that done, then we can contribute that to Pharo and to others, and that they will take it and use it as it is sort of the successor to Metacello and overcomes a lot of the limitations of Metacello. And it also deals with Tonel directly and keeping those attributes and putting them back out. So it would take the place of the loader in your architecture, and we would hope that it could be ported as well, and that it could be made flexible enough to handle all of the differences between VA and the other dialects. So.
Yeah. In any case, I mean, there's no question there, but I don't think we can add all the types to the Tonel, because, for instance, we cannot add an application type to replace the package. That's something that we have to do on the VAST side, because otherwise, if you receive an application, how you're going to map it? It's like, well, I mean, if you're willing to change that will be simpler for VA. But okay. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I have one question. Where's the official specification? So
in the slide number 3. I'm going back now. Not really. I mean, there is a Tonel repository, but basically, I mean, the parser, we copy it from Pharo actually to have the same parser, and that is the spec basically.
okay.
That's it. I mean, you have to work from that, and it's simpler. I mean, but there's no documentation on how to do that. So if you don't know that, and you only can have 4 types, these 4, that's it. I mean, it's just
okay.
And
Thanks.
How much time did it take you? Did it take you to implement it?
100 hours.
Okay, cool. That's the form.
Yeah, and I think it's not the hardest part was actually the sharded pools and dealing with MV versioning, handling all the stuff. I mean, it was not the parsing. I mean, the parsing was actually, that part was done by Mariano. Most of the part was done by Mariano, and it was. I mean, the hardest part was actually to import it into the MV library, not actually to parse the content. The parse is we just had to add all the hierarchy detection and all that stuff, but not.
Cool. Any other question?
In addition to shared libraries, you mentioned traits, and that was not on the to-do list. So I was wondering what's the
well, no, because the traits are supported by Pharo only, and VA doesn't support traits. So if you use traits, you basically are not making your code compatible with dialects that don't support it. I think that Gemstone doesn't support it, so you have to flatten your class that
Yeah,
uses.
but in the same way that you flatten the shared rules now, you could flatten the traits into the classes that use them, you know, and keep the metadata that these.
Well, yeah, I mean, if
But like you said, it's most of the 100 hours just for the shared pools. So.
yeah, I
doing
mean,
the
it
same
could be done, but that would be hard, I guess, because now with the class we have the definition, and we are not making much transformations except for the shared pool classes. It's like the only thing that we are heavily manipulating both ways, out and in.
The traits in Pharo, they are in the final image you can download, but if you start from the Bootstrap image, the smallest one, and start loading the packages you want, you can decide not to have traits in the image. So the smallest kernel of Pharo, the really core of Pharo, does not have traits at all.
Great.
But yes, maybe flattening could be a solution, but depends on the, yes, on the, you will have to implement all the logic, and I don't know if it's worthy. I think it's clear to you, if you want to have a project that is really used in many dialects, you will try to avoid some of the features. It's the same with features with from other dialects.
Okay, Hernan is drawing circles in the air.
Yes, that means time's up. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Time for a break. Thank you.